Your circle will change as you accomplish your goals and level up. Everybody can't go.
And we're live. Welcome to another Wednesday evening. Happy Wednesday to you all. And we're here for another Everybody Can't Go Convo. I have another special guest for you. Today we have in Guy Holley. And I know what you're thinking. Is this your cousin Guy? Is this your brother Guy? Whose Guy is this? Well, I can let you know that even though he spells Holly right, is actually no relation, but I have adopted him as my special cousin. And I've adopted his entire family because all of the little Hollies and his wife Holly, all of the Hollies, when you spell it right, you automatically a cousin of me, okay? Sorry for the Hollies that don't got the E before the Y. And he is coming to us from Access Grant Ed, which is a company that specializes in helping you to get to the grants. So I will turn it over to you, Guy, so that you can introduce yourself a little bit and let us know about Access Grant Ed and what you guys have going on right now and in the near future.
Yeah. First and foremost, thanks, Jessica, for having me on. Yes, we are adopted cousins, right? We made each other our family. But definitely, Access Granted was really birthed out of my desire to see communities changed. And honestly, I was tired of seeing plate sales, right? Like I live in rural Northeastern North Carolina, and a lot of times, a lot of organizations, they would be doing plate sales, spaghetti sales, a fish plate, chicken plate, pork chops, what we see. And I'm like, there's a better way to do, like, to get the money that we need to have the impacts that we want to do. And so my experience, I'm a fourth generation community changer, starting my great grandfather and my great grandmother, moved to my grandma, watched my mom do this work with the grant starting at age 10. I was able, she was doing it before, but I was able to recognize what was going on. And then I saw that work. And so when I became in the role of youth development in 2017, I didn't have any funding for my programs, but but I knew I needed to do the work that I was hired to do. And so I said, hey, my mom got grants to change our entire community space. I can do the same thing. And so I started writing grants to bring in the funds for me to do the work that I was designed to do. And fast forward last year, actually last Super Bowl Sunday, I woke up after going on a 44-day fast, got baptized again in front of my kids. And I just heard God's audible voice was like, create a grant writing workshop. And I did. I used the information I had. I got some stuff from my mom's, and then we put something together that's been amazing. And last year we were able to impact 43 organizations, teaching them the best practices in grant writing, how to answer those questions clearly, what they're asking for, to really give you the understanding so that way you can do the work of grant writing and grant receiving. And then we begin to evolve some of those things, teaching you the world surrounding grants, because it's one thing to know the technical side, but there's some hacks and tricks and things that you can do to enhance your ability to receive grants, especially if you're doing things right in your local community. And it also just, things that can help build your name. And so you also asked what we have coming up. We're working on relaunching the grant writing workshop to our virtual format, so that way we can have more impact on people across the United States. And I'm super excited about that, working with the team now. We have a target date of, in the end of April, but we may be pushing it to the early May, just because we want to make sure our marketing and other aspects are going out to make sure that the maximum amount of people can really hear what's going on, and they can be educated along the process.
Okay, that's awesome. That sounds really awesome. As always, we'll make sure in the show notes that you guys have the links that you need, so that if you're interested in that workshop that's coming up in a couple weeks here, that you're able to log on, get signed up, and get the preliminary information that you need so that you can get your grants written. So you talked a bit about what inspired Access Granted as a brand.
Mhm.
Um, were there any personal aspirations or like your vision that you have for your life or anything like that that had a heavy bearing on your beginnings with Access Granted?
Yeah, honestly, when I first started doing it, I was just like, I just was tired of seeing people do X, Y, and Z. And honestly, I didn't even think of it as a real deal funding stream for me. I just was doing it to be, because I knew that people needed the education and I had the knowledge. But once I started diving deeper into my story, once I started really looking at the business side of it, is actually a space where a lot of people are making a lot of money. But then it's also, as I started even researching, okay, who's out there, what's actually being sold. I saw people sharing a lot of misinformation, leading people to purchase X, Y, and Z. And then I was like, well, this ain't the real deal. Like this ain't all truth. Like they're giving you half truths. And then that's what really started motivating me. Like, okay, let's really turn this into a business. Let's make this for real and legit because the education part is who I am. Like I crafted my skill sets in youth, and it's actually 4-H is the program, but it's a educational role where we're taking research information, like legit that really smart people are doing in the world, making it simple and plain for the everyday person in the places that we serve to do. And for me, it was youth. And so I took the researchers' information, repackaged it up into the programs that fit my audience, and then delivered the information in the educational format through the different delivery modes. And so for me, when it became the business, I begin to, yes, I did begin to see how this can help free me up from my day job, from the people that I work with one on one, because there's some lack of understanding for those entrepreneurs who have, became established. They got the sales and they're generating the revenue in their business. So now they're ready to start giving back. But when they start their nonprofit, there's some foundational things together. They don't understand the board. They only just have 3 people on their board because that's what the rules say. I say, no, we need a little bit more, especially talking about the work that you want to do. I hear your vision. And then when I started getting into that lane, I'm like, okay, day job, I love what you've done. You've taught me a lot, but the work that I'm called to do, and for me to do it with excellence and not lose track of my family, because I have 4 kids, right, and one wife. So we're total 6, and I need some peace myself. I saw that this as my tool for freedom, but also my tool for freedom by helping others create massive impact in their community, and also helping their people reach freedom as well too, from whatever it is that's holding them down.
That sounds amazing. That is amazing. I love the transition that you made from, your full time and having this as something that you have done, it sounds like for years, just as a way to help your community. And now you're even taking that to a whole nother level where not only are you able to help your local community, but you are impacting other people. You said it, countrywide, to with
Mm-hmm.
taking that from your small town larger than out into your state, like literally any state, that you're
Yeah.
able to pretty much impact communities from coast to coast, north, south, like literally everywhere
Yeah.
with your work, and making that choice to step out and say, you know what, no, like I'm going to do this full time, and stepping into that calling on your life. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, as you were looking at making that transition, everybody has an everybody can't go story. And while you were making that transition from that work life and doing Access Grant Ed as kind of like secondary, and you made
Mm-hmm.
that shift into Access Grant Ed being like the primary as far as the work that you're doing, and combining the work that you're doing in the community with career, and creating longevity there for yourself and others. What were some personal and professional changes that you made when you started to realize everybody can't go as you made that transition?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna be transparent. I'm still working my day job now, and I'm working on being able to leave my day job, using this because I realized the work that I need to do with my one-on-one clients, it takes away too much from my family, and that's priority number one, what my wife desires from there. And I don't want to burn that and lose, be so buried in serving others that I miss serving my first ministry as my family, and making sure that they get what they need from their dad and from her husband. Yeah, that's the right way to say that. But what, your brand, I love it. Everybody can't go. The first thing that everybody can't go when I think about it for me was that in my current state, I can't go to that next level. And here are some reasons why. Because I was horrible with my time management. Horrible, right? And not just time management, but really the task management that came in there. Like I'm naturally wired to do a whole bunch of things and not be hyper focused on one to two things that I need to be doing. And because I love to serve, I'm like, yeah, I'll go help you out over here. I'll go help you out over there. I'll take this phone call now and like to hear what your problem is. But then I slowly started to put some boundaries up. It's like, somebody, hey, I want to talk to you about, marriage and stuff. Hey, shoot me a voice recording. At first, I said, hey, can I give you a call? Talk about it. I said that what I would normally do in the past was like, okay, I'll stop everything, listen to them. It'll be an hour and a half time, and then I'm mentally drained to do X, Y, and Z. But what I started doing was that because I knew that my current guy, the current version of guy, couldn't go to where I desired to be at. I had to start putting those boundaries up. So versus taking that phone call, I'll shoot them a text and say, hey, I'm in the middle of something. Or if I'm really focused, it's on do not disturb. But if I'm actually about to begin something, hey, shoot me a text. I'm about to do this. Shoot me a voice recording so I can be prepared for it and then come back and listen to your thoughts and then respond that way. And what that made me realize, if a person was super serious, they would do it. But then if they wasn't, they didn't do it. So I'm like, okay, cool. I just saved myself a bunch of time from that person who didn't want to do it. And then even looking at how to better manage my tasks throughout the day, I'm working on implementing a better system that's challenging me, it's stretching me, because it causes me to stop. Okay, look at all that you're doing. Do I need to delegate it? Do I just need to delete it? Is this really real? Like, do I just need to move it back to another quarter to focus on? Or, simply, okay, then what's the priority of that? So the first thing is that I couldn't go. This other thing was, yeah, I told y'all in the beginning that I started learning grant writing from my mom, right? And she still does it for a local organization here, and doing some massive things. And like to the tune, like she's in her over 30 years. And when she started writing grants, she's brought in, over $1 billion. Like she lost count at 1 billion. And but what I knew from her, I can pick her brain on how to structure some things, looking at it from this angle to give me some feedback from a consultation space. But from the business side, I learned that I can't listen to her. She can't go with me on the business side because she's never done this as a business. She's never really investigated and studied the market, right, to understand what the true value is. Like even she was asking me, how much should I charge for this person in Texas that wants, for a large organization that wants me to do things in Texas? And I was just like, well, mom, given your skill sets, you need to be at least $5,000 a month for all the value that you bring. And she was like, oh, I don't know about, I don't know, but because she did it out of just to serve, and she's never really like charged as a business. But I was like, when I was taking that advice from her, I was under setting my price for the value that I also bring too, and how I can help organizations be positioned where they're going to go get 6-figure grants, like on their own. Like they don't even have to hire a grant writer. Right. And when I started recognizing that, I was, at first I was going too far into this, but I had to sever ties with my mom when it came to the business side of it from pricing, just because she hadn't done it before. And that wasn't where she was focused on doing it at. And so I had to get around. Again, that was another part of me, another person that couldn't go. was my mom. And then first and foremost, it was me, my habits, some behaviors that weren't serving towards the future me of where I need to be at to be able to serve people at a high capacity one-on-one, and even y'all that come into my workshops, right? It takes preparation time. And so how do I prepare? Task management. I had to really adopt that and own it. Even though it was hard, it hurt, I had to do it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love the way that you were able to navigate, it sounds like in a healthy way. You talked about, slowly implementing things so that you were able to modify your own behaviors and habits to get to the version that you're at now. And I can attest, you guys, this, like, he's telling the truth about this. I literally thought, because of the changes that you've made over the past, it's been almost a year or so, I thought that
Mm-hmm.
you were already done with your 9 to 5 because of all of the laser focused changes that you've made with that task management and being able to get more done. I thought that you freed up a lot more of your time. So that just goes to show you guys what doing those small changes over an extended amount of time, being committed to that process, how much of a difference that can make. I literally thought that he created 8 additional hours a day by not leaving his 9 to 5. That that's what I thought that I saw because of all of those small modifications so that he's able to focus on those tasks and to actually move the needle in the business in Access Grant Ed. And I will say that that is one of the things that I had to start doing myself so that I could
Mm-hmm.
create more time for myself. Sometimes we don't realize how much of our time that we're inadvertently wasting because we're not organized enough for the tasks that we have. And a part of that organization, like you said, you have to look at where you can delete some things that really may not be as important for you to do right now. Make sure that you're prioritizing the things that you do have to do. And also, don't be afraid to delegate when it's the proper time. Those things that your time can be better served with doing something else that is of priority, but some of those smaller or mundane tasks that do need to be done, but you can delegate it to someone else, make sure that you exercise that as well. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I love the way that you handled that situation with your mom. There was that one specific thing that you needed to compartmentalize out that it's like, okay, great. You've given me the foundation, all of these things that I need, but there's this one aspect of turning this into a business that has to change. So, what I want you guys to pull out of that is sometimes you need to compartmentalize and also find the right person to be a resource to you. He walked us through exactly how in the grant writing space his mother was a good resource for him, but there was a slight, just a small thing when we're looking at his business, the structure, and his valuation and different things like that. That was a place where he needed to seek out someone different to be the correct resource for that specific aspect. So don't be afraid to lean on other people and make sure that you are using people as resources or using the resources that people have and putting them in the proper place in your life so that they're actually helping, not harming the vision that you have and what you're building toward and trying to get to. So those were a couple of nuggets for you guys there. All right. And then we talked a bit about the personal and professional changes that you've made as you've been
Mm-hmm.
building out Access Granted and the person that you needed to become. What would you advise anyone who is making like these same type of transitions? What would be your advice to anyone who's making transitions similar to yours?
Yeah. One of the things, and that's a really good question. I think the first space is to focus on you only, right? We can be around a group of people. You're following, Jessica, right? Everybody can't go. And you seeing her make these changes. And so you try to put yourself at the same pace and speed that she's moving, and you're just getting started. Yet both Jessica and I, we invested to be around several coaches who've been working diligently with us to move forward, and you haven't done that yet. You haven't made those steps for your life, and so don't don't compare yourself to others. Look at what you can do. The other thing, once you focus on yourself, is identify one thing that you can do that you can begin to start, the one that's going to be the most impactful for you, and then add on to it once you get that down. So here's a perfect example. Me and Jessica, we were at in December. One of our other mentors, his name is Dr. Gersh Kim. He said he did for his fitness. He does a quarter of a mile of walking lunges every single day. I said, okay, that sounds like a good challenge. Let me start with a tenth of a mile one day a week. Let me do that. I promise you, I couldn't do it straight. I had never done that before in my life, but I said it sounded like a good challenge to start getting to. And then it's not the actual action, but the benefits of it. And so what I did, I had never done that before in my life. Something new. I knew I was going to be on my own. So what I do during my morning walks, where I've learned, this is another trick I'll share this later too about habit stacking. But during my morning walks, I said, okay, let me do a tenth of a mile in this at my own pace, at my own speed. I know I can't do it like him, but let me do what I can. Let me rest. Let me stop. Let me walk around a little bit. Let me do a little bit more till I get to that tenth of a mile. I started that in January. It's now March. I'm doing 3/10 of a mile 3 times a week now. But I started with that 1/10 one time a week, added a little bit more. I did start at twice a week at 1/10. I said, let me try to do a little bit more. And I said, okay, I got the 2/10 of a mile 2 times a week, but I was still walking. But then I started saying, hey, can I do 2/10 of a mile straight through? Maybe rest the amount of lunges that I just did. So if I did 30 lunges, I'm gonna rest 30 seconds. And then I started to add more to it. My body started to adapt and change, and I was able to add more to that. And then the third thing is look at how you can habit stack, right? Ways I made more time for myself. I started looking at what can I add together. So me and Jess, we're on a morning call every morning. So I'm on our morning call. I do my mobility routine. I do all those things that I have to do, and then I'm also walking on portion of that call, so that way I can come back and maximize that first hour before I start work to do a little bit of business things, and that way it helps me move the needle, like where I need to be really creative, really like thinking through some deep stuff. Because once I go to work, I'm like, I can't do too much deep thinking, and at the end of the day it's just harder for me. So I set myself up, and that was one way that I began to be able to do that and make that transition. So the first one is identify the one thing that you can do. No, the first thing was one look at, do your own race, right? Focus on you. Don't look at everybody else. But use them for motivation to where you want to get to, but look at what you can do in your real situation. The second thing is identify one thing that you can do until you can add something else. And when you can add something else, look at how you can habit stack those things that you're looking at doing into your normal day and routine. And that's what's been helping me to make that transition.
Awesome, awesome. So, boom, there go y'all gems right there. He gave you the 1, 2, 3 action steps. So those are some tidbits that you can go ahead, take those notes down. And even if it's not something, well, actually what he gave you, that is something that you could do. You could do it and do it right now. Okay. But if it's something that you're like, okay, let me write this down, you can still, if you need to, table it and use it for later. Some of these gems, write these things down. There have been so many times where I'm like, you know what, that's good. I'm going to write this down in my notebook. And at the time and season in my life when I was ready for it, and I'm like, oh, this is the perfect time to implement that thing that I wrote down. Let me go back through my notes and take a look at what I wrote down. And it may be something that I wrote months ago, sometimes up to a year ago. And I'm like, I'm ready for that now. So even though this is something that you can literally get off this pod today and you can implement these steps, which I would encourage you to. If it's not the right time or season, still make sure that you write those things down in your notebook and come back to them when it's the right time for you. I'd like to move back to talking about grants a bit more
Hmm.
because of the space that you're in. I will say that at least, you know what, I'll speak for me. I had a misconception that in my business, I'm like, oh, guy, that's the grants guy. That's really valuable. I've worked in nonprofits before as like a camp counselor or a youth group leader. And when it came to the portion of talking about grants and how much grant writers cost, like we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about five figures that people are charging for doing just one grant. And
Mm-hmm.
so during the process, I started to hear about the different uses for the money, the different things that people in the nonprofit would do once the grant came in. And I never thought that my business would be eligible for a grant, that, excuse me, that there would be any grants out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to people in any sector or space that are just like, oh, well, no, that there probably isn't a grant out there for me, and they kind of just like don't even put it in their back pocket. They literally are just like, oh no, that's not for me, and then keep it moving in business.
Yeah, yeah. So historically, grants were really only for nonprofits, right? That was, one of the major ways that they received funding, either coming from the federal government, from the state government, private industry, public foundations, private foundations. They would look at ways to give out grants to nonprofits to help them with to I can't put a pinpoint when the shift started happening, but I know that I first started seeing like FedEx giving things out for small businesses. Okay, that was about 7 years ago. And then I started, once I got into this space and really began to investigate, I saw that, okay, yeah, there are more organizations, some nonprofits that, bring in funds to help small businesses develop, or that they give out grants to small businesses to help them to be able to start and spur more jobs around economic development. And then even the federal government, they're looking at other ways too to help small businesses to be able to spur more economic growth within their local communities. And specifically, I know that for some in rural spaces, that's there too. And then even there was there's still a major push for women of color, women owned businesses that are the primary owner, indigenous persons, because they've recognized from the data that you all are the ones that not struggle the most, but have the most challenges when it comes to getting funding, whether be through traditional loans and things like that from a small business side. And so there's been a greater push from different entities to give you money. The challenge, though, is finding them, right? You can do some grant searches, through Google. The tools that I use they're actually primarily for nonprofits, but also thankfully it has governmental spaces in it, and then it pulls up things that small businesses can apply for them. And if you're meeting these specific areas, but again, it's I did a Google search the other day for one of my friends, and I found like 40 grants, like a list that Nerd Wallet put together of the top 40 grants for women, right? And so I just shot that over to her. So I would say first change your thinking process to, hey, there can be a grant for me out there, and then go look for it, right? And honestly, the questions for small businesses are a lot easier than they are for nonprofits, but you're competing with a lot more because every small business would like to have some cash and ain't got to pay back. Even my business, right? I'm looking at ways, hey, how can I leverage my knowledge and tools to tap into some grant funding myself, so that way I can help offset costs for different nonprofits who can't necessarily afford all my services and things of that nature, to be able to position them for the work that they actually need, so that they can attract more people, or excuse me, attract more funding into their business. And again, a nonprofit is a business. It's just taxed differently. So we don't always consider a nonprofit as a business. No, it is a business, because you need to run it like a business if you're starting up. If not, it's going to collapse. Sorry, that was a side tangent. One of my things, little things I was always want to make people aware of. Yeah.
No, that's really good information, and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Before we close out here, the last thing that I wanted to ask you about was And I've sent things to you before, like, hey, is this real? Does this sound right? What are some of the things that we can look out for once people start to research for their own grants? Are there any telltale signs of like scams, or the grants that aren't real, or like the people that are on social media that are like, oh, hey, well, I have this grant, whatever, whatever. And I send you things all the time and DM you things all the time like, hey, is this real? Something about this doesn't sound right. What are some of the telltale signs that we should either just run or contact you, a consultant professional, to make sure that we aren't giving our information to a scammer?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one, definitely don't put all your serials and your EINs up front immediately, right? You can investigate, especially if they're claiming to be a nonprofit. You can actually pull their 990, which is their tax filing, to show, okay, are they really giving out these dollars? You can, it's actually, they have to report all that inside of their space. Let me see if I'll actually give you the link, Jessica, where you can actually pull. And let's say if it is a nonprofit, you want to check to make sure that they are legit. You can go to this link that I'll show you, type in a nonprofit's name, and then you can pull up their 990 report, and it shows, okay, who that they give to. Now, when it comes to some general people, like, yeah, I got this grant list for you for businesses and stuff. All right, I'm gonna be real. Some people might be legit. I purchased one of those myself to kind of see what was in that. It was $10, and I said, I know this man making a racket off of this, but he used the term business, right? About 90% of those grants were for nonprofits. And why? Because a nonprofit is a business. They didn't lie to you. They told the truth, but at the same time, it still wasn't directly for an LLC, which were the majority of the people who were joining. And so, you want to look for those type of transparencies. Hey, reach out to them, ask question. What's the percentage breakdowns of your grants in here? Right? Yeah, there's some people that out there who've identified some resources, and they may not be coming out to next year, and that's cool. And yeah, there were some small business grants in there that weren't available, that passes that purchase at the end of the year. But at the same time, they used the language because meaning a nonprofit is a business. It's just taxed differently. The tax filing is different.
Mhm.
And they use that to not trap, but to lure people in to purchase their product and service. And so another thing that you can be, mindful of is, I've seen some organizations that, to access this grant, you need to give $1. Okay, you can, probably do some Google searches on that program to see how much of the grant funding they give out. So do your due diligence. Just go that extra step beyond their website. Read some pages. Yes, just because, and I'm going to say this, just because you apply for a grant does not mean that you're going to get it. Right? That is the biggest thing. Even if you pay for a professional grant writer, we don't know if we're going to get it. We're going to do our best to make sure that it's at the highest level, that we do our check process. For me, I make sure that you're operationally sound, right? Before I even start working with you to do grant writing. Hey, have you done this yet? Have you done this yet? I have a full checklist to make sure you ain't got any red flags, because I know that will harm you going forward. But then the reason why I never guarantee that a grant that I write will get accepted is because I don't know on who's reading on the other side. Right? I can look at their reports and say, yeah, they give to organizations like the ones that I'm working with right now. Okay, they do this. I've reached out and called out. I've joined their webinars that they have to talk about their program. But at the end of the day, I don't know who's reading that. Right? They can have a person that's highly knowledgeable about the subject matter, which are, your federal grants. They typically do have people that are highly knowledgeable about the subject matter. But on the other side of the equation, they could have somebody up there who doesn't care. They're just up there to get a name for themselves. I actually serve on a board where I read grants. In my first year, I saw people who didn't even read through the whole thing. They just read one line. And they say, oh yeah, we like that it does this, this, and this. I'm like, but did y'all check this? Did y'all ask this question here? Like, I came in like super critical because I knew that I was responsible. I was being a steward of the resources that we gathered to give out to people. So when a person says, yeah, I'm going to promise you that you get this grant, that's a red flag, because in reality, they don't know who's reading that grant. So if someone's promising you that they're going to write this grant and you're going to get awarded, the only way that I would question that, I would ask these questions. Are you reading the grants to determine who gets that? Do you know everybody on that board who's doing that, who's reading these grants? Am I the only one that's applying for that kind of thing? Because in reality, as a grant writer, one that's helping you to do this, we don't always know who sits on the board. Yes, for me, I've actually learned of some people because I got involved and I'm in that space, I'm in that circle now. I can pick their brains. Like even on one of my last recordings, I had in reality, I had my mom, like she sits on the local board. So I brought her on to say, hey, what do y'all want to see and what do y'all do not want to see when y'all writing these grants, right? And so when you find a person who's doing some things like that, that are bringing people on, that are hiding the truth, yeah, you might want to work with them. But when a person just, comes out and says, yeah, I'm gonna make sure you're gonna get funded with this one grant, I'm running away quickly because I know that's cap. That's all cap. And yeah, so those are some red flags. One, just do some due diligence. Do that extra step of just looking beyond their website. Look at, if it's a nonprofit, you can pull their 990 and see how much they really gave out. If it's a person talking about, I'm giving out, you can buy my year grants or on grants, like a booklet on grants for businesses, do some due diligence. Hey, what's the ratio of nonprofit to for profit in this? Right? You can ask that question. If they're like, oh, it's all, all 100% for profit, I'm gonna question that because there are not as many for-profit grants as there are for nonprofit grants, because the nonprofit grant has been out for over 60 years, right? There's no way to catch up from that time of being in the space of giving out grants. And then lastly, and if anybody's saying they can get you a grant like off of one shot and they're not walking you through steps, if you are a nonprofit, right, you need to start building your track record. They're saying, I know I can go ahead and get you this multi-million-dollar grant from this space, and you ain't never got grants before, and they ain't even checked your stuff to make sure you're good. You need to question them. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting on my rant because I've seen it. Like I've seen these people out here telling all these half truths to people, getting you for your money, and then you don't get the results that you want to have, and then you're out. Because in reality, you have to pay a grant writer up front for the work that they do, because when you put inside of your budget that you paid a grant writer and you're trying to pay them back, you can't pay for work that you've already done in a grant. You can only pay for work that you're doing forward. And it's not even good to put that you're paying a grant writer as a line item, because in the industry standard, it's just red flag. I don't know why they did that. It doesn't make sense to me, but it was actually, I know why, because they were, marking up the value to be able to get some things that were done and not actually moving towards the contribution factor of having an impact in the community space. But so one reason why I don't want y'all, I'm saying all these things because I don't want you to get caught, right? I want you to be able to work with a person, to do some due diligence, to say, hey, they have done this, this, and this. Yeah, they may not have, have the highest accolades of like, so for me, when I started grant writing, moving into this business, I had $55,000 underneath my belt, but that was all that I needed to run my program and do the work that I needed to do. But what it was, I had 100% of my grants funded that I wrote. Also with that, I learned there's a process that goes into that. So that same process, it took me from getting a $500 grant all the way up to, it was like around $14,000 that I received. And then I took that information when I started working for other people as a subcontractor. It was for federal grants. I took that same process that I did for that $500 grant and applied it for their, got them $250,000, right? I took that same process for an organization who called me up, and it's one of my friends, a local church, and they said, hey, I need, the person that was helping me write this grant, She backed out the week before it was due. I had 3 days. Actually, I had 3 full days before the grant was submitted, but I had to work 8 hours out of those 3 days, plus kids. And I was able to take that process, get it to her. So in less than 3 days, less than 35 hours, was to help them to restructure their program that they were trying to do to get them funded for their first $10,000 grant. The same process that I met with the organization here in Michigan, one of our coaches, I had 2 weeks to work with them. I had three and a half hours of conversation what they needed, but I was able to take the same process that I used from all my other grants before and then help them to submit a $20 million grant, right? So once you learn that process, you're able to then apply for a range. And that's when I teach myself. Sorry, I got too far. But if they're not helping you to do those things, run away. Ask them what their process is. Sorry, I got too far. My bad, Jess. I got too far in it. You should have cut me off.
No,
You should have
that
cut
is,
me off. Sorry.
of course
Yeah, you
not.
should have cut
No,
me
this
off.
is all good stuff.
Yeah.
You actually like answered a lot of, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Because as I'm scrolling online, I'm seeing all of these different things popping up, and I'm like, well, is this real? If it's real, how does it work? Just a bunch of different questions, because this, like you said, if you're not in this space, the misinformation, there's a lot of this stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And exactly what you pointed out, it may not be a bold-faced lie or just a straight up scam, but it can be a bit deceptive in the way it's presented, or readers can take it as a misrepresentation of what is actually available. So I'm really glad that you shared all of that info, because that's exactly what we need to know when we're not in the grant writing space, or for those of us who may have just heard about grants and grants for small businesses, women-owned businesses, or other disadvantaged business groups. But we don't know where to start, don't know what to look for, don't know what to run away from. So that was really, really good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, that is our time for today. And if you guys are looking for Guy Access Granted to get to those grants, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, you can check me out on LinkedIn, Guy A. Holley, Guy A. Holley. My name's in the corner down there. And then on Facebook, you can join the Getting to the Grants community. It's open. Getting to the Grants, that is an open community that you can join. I'm actually going more in there and giving more in-depth information. My Instagram is access_grant_ed. I go live every night on Facebook. Every Tuesday night, not every night, no way. But every Tuesday night, I go live and we talk about different subject matters that help you get to the grants. And then my email address, if you're like, hey, Guy, if I just want to talk one-on-one, well, actually, my website is www.accessgrant-ed.com. You can go up there and book some time with me, some consulting time. Like if you really want to get into some nitty gritty in the middle, some things, you got some struggles going on, you can go there and book some time there, or you can simply send me an email and hey, you want to get them plugged in and be on my email list for when I'm releasing different actually releasing the next grant writing workshop that we're going to be doing live for 3 days to make sure you're getting all the nuggets, all the gems, all this fire that y'all call a little bit here. And my email address is holly.guy.a@gmail.com.
Okay. So I'll make sure that all of those are in the show notes for you guys to access. Thank you so much for joining us today. And even if you just want to dip your pinky toe in, make sure that you check out Guy on Facebook. You see me in there often Tuesdays. I'm kind of just expecting for Guy to jump on so I can find out all of these little tidbits as I go to learn more about grants, so that when the time comes for me to apply for one of my own, that I know the preliminary information that I need, have that organizational structure set up properly, and so that I don't get one of those $10, what I call scam books. or send someone my information and have my identity stolen or whatever. But
Yeah.
anywho, we thank you so much for coming on with us today, Guy. This was super informative. You guys go ahead and drop down in the comments. Let us know what you thought. If you have any questions, drop them in down there. You know, I'm always checking and responding to you guys in the comment section. And we thank you guys for joining. Thanks, Guy.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of
All
course.
right.